Like the title of the video says, we are going to be covering Zephyr and her passive ability. Now, before we get into that though, I would like to talk about the helmet system and how I'm going to be restructuring some of my guides. So effectively, whenever I get to an ability that is a helmet ability, I will be discussing it as normal, in depth, as much as I can, as much as I can speak to that ability and how it works. But I will actually start including some other things, and that will be what this ability might be good on. So, hey, this ability actually really unlocks this potential in another frame or something of that nature. So just keep an eye out for that. I am going to be restructuring some things. I'm also going to be doing sort of a deep dive into the helmet system overall and doing an in-depth review of each ability and how strong or weak they are. I might do some sort of tier list. I'm not 100% sure about the format of it yet. But let's go ahead and get into Zephyr and her passive ability. So Zephyr's passive is she is floaty. So passive, move faster while airborne and fall 35% slower. So what we're gonna do is I'm gonna just come over here. I'm gonna stand on this actually, let's back up to the energy. We'll back up to the energy. I'm gonna point straight up. I'm gonna bullet jump in the air, and I'm gonna hold down forward. So I landed here. All right. So let's actually time that a little bit differently. What I'm going to do this time is I'm going to jump and I'm going to immediately start holding down forward, okay? So I'm holding down forward and we land here. Alright, so we landed on the very edge. This is our passive, right? Now, interestingly, and we'll talk about this a little bit more in a second, she does have an augment that actually outright disables her passive. This is bizarre, I agree. But we'll get to that in a second. So if I do the exact same test, I'm going to just jump straight up and hold down forward the entire time. I land here. Now, her passive says that she moves faster while airborne and she falls 35% slower. Let's take a look at that. I do not notice any sort of movement increase, to be honest with you. If I go and do a bullet jump and a roll, I end up like right about here. That's fine. Let's do it again just for a little bit of consistency. I'll try to time it. So I'll jump right about the console and I'll roll. I probably did that terribly. I'm sorry. I'll try again. I'm bad. So bullet jump, roll. So I get about to there. Let's go ahead and take it off and see how far we get. I took the augment off, so I'm going to do the exact same thing. Bullet jump, roll, same spot. This does not seem to affect any of her acrobatics, her bullet jumping, her rolls, anything like that. All it affects is your ability to float in the air and make it a little bit longer. Now, this is hardly noticeable when you just jump. Like, you can kind of tell that it's happening and it's fine, especially over distances sometimes when you're resetting your downward velocity with a hop. It's somewhat noticeable, but most of the time you're not even going to notice it unless you're just aiming down sights. Aiming down sights while airborne really does feel different, and I think that's probably what they were going for, because you do hang in the air and you're somewhat steady for a while, but you do eventually fall back down. I think for this passive to be worth it, honestly, she should just hang in the air whenever she aims down sights. Yeah. I mean, honestly, the you fall a little bit less slowly thing is not great. And this kind of bleeds into the fact that she has an augment that literally its purpose is that it disables your passive to give you 15% ability strength. This is so bizarre to me that you would have an augment to just remove a passive. This is such a band-aid, and I'm pretty frustrated with it because I like the intent of Zephyr. I like the idea of having a wind frame, and if you look at like wind and how powerful it can be, Zephyr just doesn't match up with that. Now, this is her passive. This is probably the weakest thing about her. Some of her other stuff is actually pretty good, like outright pretty good. But let's talk a little bit more about her passive and why it's not great. So let's start off with the Augment and why this thing isn't good. First of all, it disables your passive, so it's like, hey, you got a problem with this? Fine, don't use it. And that, okay, fair enough, I guess. But if I go into ability strength here and I grab, where is it at? I typed that in right. Power Drift. Here, we have another mod that is 15% ability strength, but it gives us 30% chance to resist knockdown. So this is effectively replacing Power Drift in some sort of build where you really need a little bit more ability strength, which is never, like, you generally don't need this. The only thing I would say that's good about this is, obviously it's cheap because it's an Augment, and it can fit in the Exilis slot just like Power Drift can. Now, this Augment is pretty terrible in my opinion. It's very much a band-aid for people that don't like the floatiness, and we're going to start talking about what that is and why it's bad here in a second. So, Zephyr is floaty. This can be bad in certain mission types, so you'll notice I kind of float around. If I run down a steep cliff, no effect, right? This is fine. Like I can handle this. I can turn on a dime, etc., etc., etc. However, she does have an Augment. She does have an Augment, and I usually don't do this, and I apologize, but I'm gonna cover this here just to kind of give an idea. So she has this jet stream thing that makes her move faster when she has one of her abilities activated. This thing also scales off of ability strength. So if we look at turbulence, our jet stream is up to 80% speed, 79% speed. So if I activate this, I should be much faster now, right? And I am. You can very clearly see it. But you're going to start noticing that on occasion, if something is too steep, that you're actually going to kind of just fly off of it and lose your footing. Now, this isn't super common. Not everything is going to do this. However, in certain tile sets, like derelict ships where the infested have taken over, you are going to notice this. You're going to notice it a lot. You're going to be floating into walls instead of just, you know, running and then turning and going down some stairs. So when in the case of maps that generally some of their stairs are a lot more steep than this, because you can obviously tell this is a very slanted, I'm not exactly sure what that would be, maybe 40 degrees. But it isn't exactly a steep incline. And in a lot of maps, as Zephyr, if you're running around, especially with a speed boost, you're actually going to be just floating off into walls and taking a lot of time. This can actually factor into some races as well. So sometimes you just want to fall when you're doing some of the Iatan sculpture runs and things of that nature. And you're going to have to use some of your other abilities to compensate because you're going to be floating in the air 35% too long. I do think they could change some of this to be more effective, like, you know, just holding it down and being able to just stay in the air when you do that. I think that would be fine. But all in all, this ability is extremely weak, and the Augment is sort of like a band-aid that slaps you in the face. And I know I don't normally come down on a frame and how bad an ability is like this, but this deserves it. This very much deserves it. But if I missed anything or misrepresented anything, as always, you know, burn me in the section below. You know, like, comment, subscribe, you know, typical YouTuber stuff, but that's kind of whatever. I really want to know if there's some secret sauce that I'm missing. That's what I want to see in the comment section below. So if you guys know why I'm wrong, please let me know, because I love the idea of Zephyr and I love the idea of Wind, but as we go through some of these abilities, you're going to start seeing that she just doesn't compete as a Warframe right now against most other things. She has a couple cool things she can do. We're going to get into that, but I think that's going to do it for the video. Thanks for watching, guys.